Hey, what's up, traders? This is the Option Addict from over at www.tradingaddicts.com. I know it's been a little while since I've cracked out the old video software, but felt it was important enough to get back on that train again. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll do a little bit of market analysis here, shall we? This amazing trend that's been with us for quite some time, you can see is starting to falter here a little bit. And I don't know, looking at price action here, let's give it the old 30-day makeover here. You can see it looks a little toppy, right? I think this little range we pounded out here in the S&P, should we see that give way to the downside, which would be a break of roughly 1180 or so in the S&P cash index, I think it makes sense to look for a bigger pullback, which the next technical target would be down here at about 1150 cash on the S&P. And you look at this little kind of topping out pattern looks to be, I don't know, looks across the NASDAQ, the Dow, the Russell, small cap stocks are starting to weaken up here a little bit. As the market though has been topping out like this, we've been doing pretty good. We had a lot of our stocks holding up here as of Friday. We're still trading a lot of small caps right now. We backed off options, at least for the time being, on big cap stocks, at least until we see a bigger pullback. But my expectation here as we get, looking a little bit further out, is we might see a little bit of a pullback here, but I'm thinking more range-bound price action for the next few months, maybe even through the summer. We'll see how that pans out, but we'll be looking really primarily at sector rotations and looking to trade those. And we're still on that kick of shorting volatility, and I don't have to pull up the VIX to know that any spike in the VIX has been met by a pretty decent liquidation, and that trend is still working out pretty good. So with that said, I'll kind of give you an idea of what's on my list here this week. And there's a couple things. We saw a pretty broad-based sell-off on Friday. Really, really weak market. Stocks pretty weak across the board. The one thing that didn't look too bad, though, was oil. And if you look at the USO, the price action on Friday was something that was really intriguing to me. The way the volume picked up here, just in the ETF. I know there's a little bit of a disconnect between, the tracking of crude oil versus the USO, but really it's just what oil did and how prices looked here on Friday, and what a lot of the stocks did within the within the oil patch. You can look at a couple here like DNR. Breaking out of this little triangle setup, going to new relative highs here. Breaking out on Friday. SU traded pretty well. Price has been consolidating here too, and they're starting to break away from this. I'm not a big fan of this particular stock, but just pointing out a couple of strong survivors here on Friday. Occidental, which is one I am a big fan of, as a matter of fact, already having been outside of this range, where the OAH has traded back into that range. You can see a stock here like Occidental going to new highs on some pretty good volume here on Friday. BRY, is one. Dip was bought, big volume behind that. ENP, which is one that I like quite a bit. Encore Energy Partners, which looks to me like it wants to break out of this beautiful little triangle setup. Big volume there on Friday. BBG, holding up pretty well, only off by a little bit. Volume looked pretty good, and looking like it might want to get out of this range that it's been trading in. And then you got old BJ Services, heavy volume in the dip buying action that came in here on Friday. So that's something that stands out to me, guys. I think that's what we're going to have to look for, is little subtle movements like this within the market. And I start looking at just groups like that, little rotations where money's going into. And I still, I talked about this last week. I only wrote a little piece on this. We've been following a lot of the small cap energy stocks, which, for the most part, they've been mixed. There have been some pretty good high flyers in that space. There have been some that really haven't done much. But I still think that idea that I had last week carries over into this week, of course. Watching stocks like, APL, decent pipeline play. But look at a lot of these. MHR is one that I'm really fond of, as a matter of fact. If you look at how price action's just been holding up here in this range, good volume down here near the lows. To me, that should be an easy breakout play if crude oil stays up. GSX, again, just looking at small cap type ideas. This has been one that, as of late, has been getting a lot of volume, and prices have been consolidating, but yet making some decent progression to the upside. These little breakout plays and these patterns have been working like clockwork. And that's why we've been so hyper focused in this area, really. New Park Resources, another cheap little what I like to call a $10 darling going to new highs here today, breaking out of this little triangle pattern again. That's, these little patterns that you can make out have been working a lot. AEZ is another one that I like. Really more of a range, but price looking pretty good, volume looking pretty good. If oil prices stay up, this would be another stock I expect to trade away from this range and get back up to that $8 area. I can keep going. I got a lot of them here. EGY coiling up, held up really well, good volume on Friday. AAV, much bigger pattern if you kind of zoom out and look at this, but near the lower end of that range, near support. DPTR, I'm long this one. It's been towing the line here at the 200-day moving average, but I think that this one should result in a breakout as well. AXAS just flagging up here near some recent highs. That should be another one that gets moving here into this week. END, if you look at this one, I love the reference points here. Much bigger rounded bottom type pattern. Big volume on Friday. Prices were off by a little bit, but still, I'd see it being pretty tough for the stock not to at least get up here near 185, 190 and test those highs before turning over. XTXI, off pretty heavy on Friday, but still I think this might be a stock that looks pretty good into this week. LNG, bigger cup and handle if you look at this on about a 2-year chart. Looks pretty good. RAME, another stock that held up pretty well, looking for it to get up towards some recent highs. KOG, the stock was getting pretty close to breaking out on Friday, huge volume behind it. NOG, yada yada. I can keep going on with these stocks, but I mean this is essentially what I'm looking for is, what stocks are holding up, which ones are weathering the storm, and which one have some consolidation patterns that we can use as reference points to manage trades here heading into next week. And the energy spot was one that I loved. I think the way the oil held up on Friday, that might be a tell here early into this week, and we'll see how that comes out firing here Monday morning. The other one that I like has been some of these REITs, and not a lot of the REITs. The IYR went to new highs on Thursday. A lot of the big cap REITs had broken out, taking out some of their highs. Boston Properties, lots of those. But I'm not really concerned there. What I do like are some of the small cap names. And they're also showing the same pattern. FCH, you can see, is just coiling up here near some of its recent highs. GRT doing the same thing. This one was actually up on Friday. NCT, which was a little heavy, but still this consolidation pattern right up here near these highs, I think is a pretty decent spot to start looking at these. And they might break down. I mean, you'll know pretty quickly on Friday as to whether or not these stocks are going to hold up. But if you look at them, they're showing the same setup all the way across the board. And the last 4 or 5 times these stocks have done that, they've gone on to, some of them 50%, even doubled in price. We've caught in stocks like Arbor has been one, but Strategic Hotels, we caught a fantastic move in this stock. Has doubled ever since we made the initial trade recommendation back through here. And these little REITs here have been amazing performers. Outside of that, I mean, I'm still looking at much bigger setups, and again, cheap and dirty stocks, right? Like GMR. We've had a play going on in the shippers now, which has been pretty amazing, but a lot of these shippers coming back to retest old highs, GMR, EXM, Navios Maritime, and just random off-the-beat patterns, like SAY has been a stock that's been coiling up forever. Finally got a little bit of an uptick here on Friday when the market was soft, stuff like that. Going over back to energy and alternative energy names, looking for stocks like LDK Solar to break out. Solar stocks have been pretty hot lately. HOKU is another one that comes to mind, breaking away from its consolidation pattern. So I'm pretty, as you can see, I'm focusing dead in on these patterns, and that's just because, especially in some of these small cap stocks, I mean, they've worked wonders. And if you know the setups, if you know the technical setups, it makes it pretty easy to manage those trades. So all of those that we looked at, I'm still looking at the home building complex to kind of dictate. Now, I think if homies continue to hold up and can hang on to the majority of these gains that they've seen, stocks like DHI, DHI, which was up on Friday, LEN, which was off by a little bit. A couple of these home builders were off by a few percentage points, but stock like HOV definitely weathering the storm. Beazer, a stock that we own, off by 2 cents. I mean, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, the market melts down and the home builders are staying up. I think that could be a really important sign for equities. Not something that takes us a lot higher. Like I think we could be pretty close to an important top here. and more range-bound activity, but I can't say that I'm totally just all-out bearish yet. I think we'll see enough rotations that you can still play the long side. But at the same time, if you're looking to short stocks, I'm going to go to the same stuff I've been preaching over and over. That's China. That's some of the weaker retailers, some of the weaker materials plays, some of the nasty banks that we talk about, like your Northern Trust and State Street. A couple of those. So as always, we've got lists of bear stocks if you want them. But I think as we watch through some of these rotations and look for some of those groups that are holding up a little bit better than others, I think that's going to be an easier play. If you're shorting stocks, I think you approach that with short-term time horizons. Be quick to take gains, because we've still seen presence of dip buyers as of late. And the market may be reversing course, but I don't expect anything too cataclysmic here. I'm thinking more range-bound activity for the remainder of the year. So, anyways, guys, that's all that I got here today. Kind of a different format, but I'm just going to kind of get my wheels greased getting back into the video setups here. So that's all I got for today, guys. So this has been the Option Addict. That's been my watch list. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
The champ is here! The champ is here!